Commander ZYX walked slowly across the polished floor of the Great Hall at Kethaprime War College. Her heavy footsteps echoed in the silence as nearly 200 young cadets watched her every move. The afternoon light streaming through the crystal windows caught the deep scars that crisscrossed her dark exoskeleton, each one telling a story of survival against impossible odds. The cadets had been waiting for this moment all semester. Commander ZYX was a living legend among the Catharian military. Her 4 powerful arms bore the weight of medals and decorations from conflicts spanning 3 decades and 17 different star systems. Some of the younger cadets had only heard whispered stories about her exploits during the Border Wars, the Plasma Rebellions, and the infamous Battle of the Twin Suns, where she single-handedly held off an entire enemy squadron. Today was different, though. Today she was here to talk about humans, and the cadets could barely contain their excitement. Everyone knew humans were the newest species to join the galactic community. They had only developed faster-than-light travel about 50 years ago, making them practically infants compared to the ancient civilizations that dominated the galaxy. The Catharians have been spacefaring for over 3,000 years. The crystalline Zephyrians have been exploring the cosmos for even longer. Most of the cadets had never even seen a human in person. All they knew came from reports and data files that painted humans as primitive, emotional creatures who relied on crude technology and brute force rather than the sophisticated warfare techniques that civilized species had perfected over millennia. Their weapons were laughably simple: metal projectiles fired by chemical explosions instead of elegant plasma or energy-based systems. Their ships were powered by controlled nuclear reactions rather than the clean fusion drives or quantum cores used by advanced species. Cadet Vextar leaned forward in his seat, his compound eyes glittering with anticipation. He had read extensively about human military doctrine and found it almost comically backward. They still used physical ammunition that could run out, unlike the self-regenerating energy weapons his people favored. Cadet Mordak beside him shared his amusement. Her research project on comparative military technology had concluded that human forces would be easily overwhelmed by any moderately advanced alien military. Commander ZYX finally reached the center of the hall and turned to face her audience. Her mandibles, sharp as razors and capable of cutting through steel, clicked together in a slow, deliberate rhythm that indicated deep thought among her species. This was a sound the cadets recognized. It meant their commander was about to share something important, something that had stayed with her long after battle was over. She raised one of her 4 arms, and the hall fell completely silent. Even the soft humming of the building's environmental systems seemed to fade away as every cadet strained to hear what she would say next. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of experience that could only come from someone who had stared death in the face countless times and lived to tell about it. There was something different in her tone today, though, something the cadets had never heard before. It was not the confident swagger of a seasoned warrior recounting past victories. Instead, there was a note of what almost sounded like uncertainty, or perhaps even something approaching respect. The cadets exchanged quick glances. This was unexpected. Commander ZYX was known for her absolute confidence in Catharian military superiority. She had built her entire career on the principle that advanced technology, superior tactics, and rational decision-making would always triumph over primitive aggression and emotional thinking. She began speaking about an event from 3 years earlier, something called the Siege of Viridian Station. Most of the cadets had heard of it, a major victory for the Galactic Coalition against the invading Vorth Swarm. It had been studied in their tactical analysis classes as an example of successful multi-species cooperation and superior firepower overwhelming a numerically superior enemy. What they had not learned in those classes was that human forces had been present at the battle. This information had been quietly omitted from most official reports, dismissed as insignificant given the small size of the human contribution to the overall war effort. But as Commander ZYX continued speaking, it became clear that the humans' role in that victory had been anything but insignificant. Commander ZYX's voice grew quieter as she began describing that fateful day 3 years ago. Viridian Station had been one of the most important strategic positions in the Outer Rim territories. Built into a massive asteroid, it served as a refueling point and communications hub for ships traveling between the core worlds and the frontier colonies. The The station housed over 40,000 beings from dozens of different species, all going about their daily business when the attack began. The Vorth swarm had been planning this assault for months, maybe even years. They were unlike any enemy the galaxy had faced before, a hive-minded insectoid race that consumed everything in their path. Their bioships were grown rather than built, living creatures the size of battleships with acidic weapons that could eat through the strongest armor. Intelligence reports had suggested they were still years away from reaching this sector, but the reports were wrong. When the first wave of Vorth vessels dropped out of hyperspace, the station's automated defenses immediately sent out distress calls to every Allied fleet within range. The response was swift and coordinated. Within hours, Catharian battle cruisers began arriving with their gleaming hulls and advanced plasma cannons. The Zephyrians came next, their crystal ships shimmering with stored energy that could be unleashed in devastating beams of pure power. Commander ZY had been aboard the flagship of the 3rd Catharian Fleet when they received the emergency transmission. She remembered the confidence that filled the command center as they reviewed the tactical situation. Yes, the Vorth had numbers on their side, but the coalition forces had superior technology and experienced commanders. The Catharians alone possessed weapons that could vaporize a Vorth bioship with a single well-placed shot. The battle plan was elegant in its simplicity. The Zephyrian energy ships would form the first line of defense, using their mastery of electromagnetic forces to disrupt the Vorth formation. The Catharian fleet would then move in for precision strikes, targeting the larger bioships, while smaller vessels dealt with the swarm fighters. It was textbook coalition warfare, the kind of coordinated attack that had won a dozen conflicts over the past century. Everything was going according to plan when the human ships appeared on the edge of the sensor grid. At first, the alien commanders thought there had been some mistake in the distress signal routing. Humans were so new to galactic affairs that most military databases barely had any information about their capabilities. Their small fleet looked almost comical compared to the sleek alien warships already in position. The human vessels were boxy and utilitarian, clearly built for function rather than the aesthetic beauty that most advanced civilizations valued in their ship designs. Thick armor plating covered every surface, and strange protrusions jutted out at odd angles, weapon mounts, sensor arrays, and launch tubes to their primitive missiles. Smoke and flame trailed from their chemical rocket engines, a sight that drew chuckles from the alien bridge crews, who had long ago moved beyond such crude propulsion methods. Captain Reynolds commanded the human task force from his flagship, a heavy cruiser called the Defiant. Major Brooks led the Marine contingent aboard the troop transports. These were simple names from a simple species, or so everyone assumed. The alien officers openly discussed their doubts about human effectiveness in the upcoming battle. How could beings who still use gunpowder and metal bullets hope to contribute against an enemy that had already consumed 3 star systems? Commander ZY paused in her telling, her mandibles clicking slowly as she remembered her own thoughts from that day. She had been just as dismissive as the others, perhaps even more so. Her species prided itself on logical thinking and technological superiority. The idea that these newcomers could teach them anything about warfare seemed absurd. The human fleet took position on the far flank of the formation, where they would theoretically be safe from the heaviest fighting. Most of the alien commanders assumed they would stay there, maybe picking off a few stragglers while the real warriors handled the serious combat. The humans said little over the communication channels, acknowledging orders with brief confirmations that revealed nothing about their intentions or capabilities. Then the Vorth bioships began their approach, and everything changed. The first human boarding shuttles launched before anyone realized what was happening, streaking toward enemy vessels with a speed and determination that caught everyone off guard. What the coalition forces witnessed next would forever alter their understanding of what humans were truly capable of in warfare. The atmosphere in the great hall grew heavy as Commander Zuaxtala continued her account. Several cadets shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their compound eyes widening as they tried to process what their instructor was telling them. The cheerful confidence that had filled the room just minutes earlier was rapidly evaporating, replaced by a growing sense of unease. ZY had watched the first human boarding operation through the tactical displays on her ship's bridge. Like everyone else in the coalition fleet, She expected to see a quick and brutal end to the human assault teams. The Vorth bioships were living nightmares, their interiors filled with acidic atmosphere and crawling with warrior drones that could tear through standard body armor like tissue paper. Even veteran Catharian shock troops approached Vorth vessels with extreme caution, relying on advanced environmental suits and energy shields to survive the hostile conditions inside. But the humans who cut to the bioship's hull wore simple pressure suits that looked almost primitive compared to the sophisticated equipment used by other species. Their breathing apparatus was bulky and mechanical. Their armor was thick metal plates rather than energy-absorbing smart materials. They carried weapons that fired solid metal projectiles instead of the clean energy beams that civilized armies preferred. What happened next defied everything the alien observers thought they knew about combat in space. Instead of carefully advancing through the bioship's corridors while maintaining safe distances from the enemy, the human Marines charged forward with ferocity that seemed almost suicidal. They fired their weapons in rapid bursts, filling the narrow passages with hot metal fragments that ricocheted off the walls in deadly patterns. The sound of their gunfire was different too. Unlike the quiet hum of energy weapons, human firearms produced thunderous explosions that could be heard even through the vacuum of space via hull vibrations. Each shot created bright flashes of flame and smoke, turning the interior of the bioship into a hellish landscape of fire and destruction. But what truly shocked the watching alien commanders was how the humans responded to injury. When Sergeant Thompson's squad encountered a group of Vorth warriors in the ship's central chamber, the fighting was brutal and chaotic. The sergeant himself took a direct hit from a bioacid sprayer that completely dissolved his left arm from the elbow down. Any rational being would have retreated immediately for medical treatment, or at the very least fallen back to a defensive position. Instead, Sergeant Thompson simply switched his rifle to his remaining hand and continued directing his men's advance. His voice over the radio remained calm and steady even as alien medical sensors detected massive trauma to his circulatory and nervous systems. He coordinated flanking maneuvers, called in support from other squads, and maintained tactical awareness of the entire battle while his body went into shock from blood loss. Lieutenant Davis's actions were even more incomprehensible to the alien observers. When a Vorth bioweapon tore a massive hole in the ship's hull near his position, the explosive decompression should have killed him instantly. The sudden loss of atmosphere, the extreme cold of space, and the violent pressure differential created conditions that would incapacitate even the most robust alien physiology within seconds. But Davis kept fighting. For 20 full minutes, he held his position in the damaged section, using emergency oxygen from his suit while exposed to the vacuum of space. His team's helmet cameras showed him moving with deliberate precision, checking corners and clearing rooms even as ice crystals formed on his visor, and his movements became increasingly sluggish from oxygen deprivation. The most disturbing part was how his fellow humans reacted to these injuries. Instead of showing concern or attempting to evacuate their wounded comrades, they seemed to become more aggressive, more focused on destroying the enemy. It was as if seeing their friends hurt had triggered some kind of primitive survival instinct that made them even more dangerous in combat. The human weapons themselves were a revelation in destructive efficiency. While alien forces used precision energy beams designed to disable rather than destroy, human firearms seemed designed with only one purpose: to inflict maximum damage on living tissue. Their bullets fragmented inside targets, creating massive internal trauma. Their explosive devices were crude but devastatingly effective, often damaging their own equipment and positions in pursuit of eliminating enemies. Most shocking of all was their use of fire as a tactical weapon. In the oxygen-poor environment of a bioship, the humans deployed flamethrowers that consumed precious atmospheric resources while incinerating everything in their path. The sight of human Marines advancing through corridors wreathed in flames, seemingly unconcerned about their own safety, created an image that would haunt alien military analysts for years to come. The silence in the hall was now complete. Even the faint humming of the environmental systems seemed to have stopped as Commander Zhuaixtala reached the most difficult part of her story. Her 4 arms trembled slightly, something the cadets had never seen before from their unshakable instructor. The medals on her chest caught the light as her breathing grew heavier, each one representing a victory that suddenly seemed less significant compared to what she was about to describe. The battle had been raging for nearly 18 hours when Avorth revealed their final, most terrifying weapon. From the depths of space, a bioship unlike any they had encountered before began its approach toward Viridian Station. This creature was massive beyond comprehension, easily 10 times larger than the biggest Coalition warship. Its hull pulsed with a sickly green light, and long tentacles writhed from its surface like the arms of some ancient sea monster. Intelligence reports had whispered about such vessels, but most commanders dismissed them as exaggerated rumors. The reality was far worse than anyone had imagined. This bioship didn't just attack other vessels. It consumed them. Its tentacles could wrap around entire cruisers and dissolve their hulls with powerful acids, absorbing the metal and energy to fuel its own growth. Worse still, it could attach itself to space stations and literally eat them from the outside in. The Coalition fleet threw everything they had at the approaching nightmare. Zephyrian energy beams that could slice through asteroids barely scratched its surface. Catharian plasma torpedoes that had demolished entire enemy formations were absorbed harmlessly into its living armor. Every weapon in the alien arsenal, perfected over centuries of warfare, proved useless against this abomination. Commander Zwiaxtala watched from her bridge as the monster approached Viridian Station with unstoppable determination. Mathematical calculations showed that it would reach the station in less than 2 hours. Once attached, it would begin consuming the hull, and everyone inside would die slowly as their home was dissolved around them. 40,000 innocent beings, scientists, traders, families, children, all doomed to an unimaginable death. The retreat order should have been given. Every military manual, every strategic doctrine developed by civilized species over thousands of years of warfare called for immediate withdrawal when facing impossible odds. Preserve your forces, live to fight another day, minimize losses. These were the foundations of rational military thinking. But Commander Jackson had different ideas. His remaining ships were battered and bleeding atmosphere from dozens of hull breaches. His crews had been fighting nonstop for almost a full day, pushing their primitive vessels far beyond safe operating limits. By any reasonable measure, the human task force was finished as an effective fighting unit. Instead of retreating, Jackson opened a communication channel to the entire Coalition fleet. His voice was calm and steady, without any trace of the hysteria that might be expected from someone facing certain death. He simply stated that his ships would intercept the bioship and buy time for civilian evacuation efforts. Most of the alien commanders assumed he meant some kind of delaying action, perhaps using his vessels as mobile weapon platforms to slow the creature's advance. They were wrong. Jackson ordered all human ships to plot direct collision courses with the bioship's center mass. Not glancing blows or tactical ramming maneuvers, but head-on impacts at maximum velocity. It was suicide, pure and simple. 200 human souls aboard those ships, from veteran captains like Roberts who had served for decades to young pilots like Williams on their first deep space mission, all flying straight into certain death. The alien bridge crews watched in stunned silence as the human vessels accelerated toward their target. There was no panic in their radio transmissions, no last-minute pleas for rescue or changes of heart. Captain Roberts reported his ship's status in the same professional tone he might use for a routine patrol. Lieutenant Anderson coordinated the attack formation with mechanical precision. Even the youngest crew members maintained perfect discipline as they approached their final moments. But what came next was beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Just seconds before impact, when the human ships were so close that collision was inevitable, they did something that defied all understanding of rational behavior. Instead of simply ramming the bioship and hoping their kinetic energy would cause some damage, the humans deliberately overloaded their reactor cores. The explosions that followed were visible from 3 star systems away. 200 human beings had transformed themselves into guided nuclear weapons, each ship becoming a small sun for a brief, brilliant moment. The bioship, which had shrugged off every advanced weapon the Coalition could bring to bear, was vaporized instantly. The Great Hall remained in absolute silence as Commander Zwiaxtala prepared to deliver her final words. The young cadets sat frozen in their seats, their minds struggling to process what they had just heard. Many of them had come to this lecture expecting to hear amusing stories about primitive humans stumbling through their first real battle. Instead, They had witnessed something that challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare, courage, and the nature of intelligent life itself. Zyxtala walked slowly to the center of the hall, her heavy footsteps echoing in the stillness. The afternoon light streaming through the crystal windows seemed dimmer now, casting long shadows across her scarred exoskeleton. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that seemed to press down on everyone present. The truth she was about to reveal would change how these young officers viewed not just humans, but their own assumptions about military superiority. For 3 years following the siege of Viridian Station, the galactic military establishment had been quietly conducting a thorough review of human combat capabilities. What they discovered had shaken the foundations of strategic thinking across dozens of civilized worlds. Humans, it turned out, approached warfare from a fundamentally different perspective than any other known species. While Catharians calculated optimal victory conditions and acceptable casualty rates, humans seemed to operate on the principle that some things were worth any sacrifice. The Zephyrians planned elegant campaigns designed to achieve maximum results with minimum losses, but humans fought as if every single engagement was a matter of species survival. This wasn't just reckless aggression or primitive bloodlust, as many had initially assumed. Intelligence analysts who studied human military history discovered patterns that revealed something far more profound and disturbing. Humans had spent their entire evolutionary development fighting not just other humans, but their own planet. They had survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plagues, and natural disasters that would have wiped out most species. This history had shaped them into beings who simply did not understand the concept of acceptable defeat. When faced with impossible odds, other species would retreat, regroup, and find alternative solutions. Humans would dig in deeper and fight harder. When their weapons failed, they improvised new ones. When their tactics proved ineffective, they abandoned all tactics and relied on pure determination. Most incredibly, when their individual survival was threatened, they seemed capable of transcending normal biological limitations through sheer force of will. The implications of this discovery had sent shockwaves through every military academy and strategic planning center in the galaxy. For thousands of years, warfare between civilized species had been governed by certain unspoken rules. Battles were fought with calculated precision, casualties were kept to acceptable levels, and surrender was always an option when victory became impossible. Humans appeared to be completely unaware that these rules existed. Since Viridian Station, human military advisors have been quietly assigned to coalition forces throughout the galaxy, not as combat units. Their technology remained laughably primitive compared to advanced alien systems. Instead, they served as strategic consultants, helping alien commanders understand what it meant to fight an enemy that truly could not be defeated through conventional means. The results had been remarkable. Fleet engagements that should have ended in costly stalemates were decided decisively when human advisors suggested unconventional approaches. Defensive positions that seemed hopeless were held successfully when human tactical thinking was applied. Most importantly, enemy forces that had grown accustomed to predictable alien behavior found themselves facing opponents who refused to follow established patterns of military conduct. Commander Zyxtala paused, letting her words sink in before delivering the most disturbing revelation of all. The Galactic Intelligence Services had been monitoring human space for decades, long before first contact was officially established. They had observed human conflicts, studied their military development, and reached what they believed were accurate conclusions about human capabilities. They had been catastrophically wrong. The humans who joined the galactic community were not the savage warriors that intelligence reports suggested. They were actually the peaceful ones, the diplomats and explorers who had chosen cooperation over conquest. The humans who remained on their home world and colony planets included populations that made Commander Jackson's sacrifice look like a minor gesture of goodwill. Earth's military forces, still developing in isolation, had been shaped by conflicts that no alien species could truly comprehend. They had fought world wars that consumed entire continents, developed weapons capable of sterilizing their own planet, and somehow managed to survive their own capacity for destruction. These humans had not yet joined the galactic community, but intelligence suggested that contact was inevitable within the next few decades. The implications were terrifying. If humans who considered themselves peaceful could perform the feats witnessed at Viridian Station, What would happen when their actual warriors arrived among the stars? The galaxy had spent millennia developing sophisticated rules of engagement, diplomatic protocols, and strategic doctrines based on the assumption that all intelligent species valued their own survival above abstract principles. Humans had proven that assumption wrong, and no one knew what that meant for the future of galactic civilization.